In the 1990s, there were tribute albums made for Black Sabbath. For the first few years of the decade, Ronnie James Dio and Tony Martin took turns fronting the band, but many people still preferred the Ozzy Osbourne era from the 1970s.
Metal's popularity soared in the 1990s with MTV's Headbangers Ball, the music video segments of Beavis and Butthead, and a slew of newer bands with fresh sounds. Black Sabbath influenced countless bands of that generation. The time was ripe to showcase some of those bands, and what a better way than to have those bands cover Black Sabbath.
One of the higher profile tribute albums for 70s Black Sabbath came out in 1994. It was called Nativity in Black, a tribute to Black Sabbath. Sony and Columbia put this together, so it had a wide reach. Featured here are bands like White Zombie, Biohazard, Sepultura, Faith No More, Typo Negative, 1000 Homo DJs, Megadeth, and several more. Biohazard opens the album with After Forever. It starts with the sound of the original version of After Forever, and then Biohazard comes blasting in, gang vocals and all. Black Sabbath drummer Bill Ward makes an appearance for the music video. It would have been easy for these bands to just do note-for-note heavy interpretations with more modern technology, but White Zombie put their own spin on Children of the Grave, fitting in their signature samples and playing around with the arrangement. Megadeth's version of Paranoid was faster than the original. The band recorded the song live in one take. Drummer Nick Menza accidentally kept drumming after the song was supposed to end, thinking there was another verse.
Nick! Fuck me running.
But they decided that was the take they wanted to use. Ugly Kid Joe played NIB, the song that's been guessed by some fans to mean Nativity in Black. This album notably had involvement from members of Black Sabbath. Ozzy sings Iron Man with the Irish band Therapy. Bullring Brummies had Geezer Butler, Bill Ward, Rob Halford, Scott Weinrich, and Brian Tilse. Bullring Brummies only existed to record The Wizard for this tribute album, with the song being their only official recording. Tony Iommi was supposed to play on the song, but Black Sabbath's label, IRS, wouldn't allow him to. Aside from members of Black Sabbath and Judas Priest, another metal titan appears. Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden fame sings with Godspeed. Godspeed from New Jersey toured with Black Sabbath and Cathedral in 1994. Bruce, of course, gives the song a lot of grit. Sepultura does a thunderous rendition of Symptom of the Universe in the way that only Cavalera-era Sepultura could. They even transition seamlessly for the exotic acoustic guitar jam at the end. Corrosion of Conformity play Lord of This World.
Given Corrosion of Conformity's stoner metal sound they would adopt by the mid-1990s, they sit comfortably on a Black Sabbath tribute album. After all, their sound wouldn't exist without albums such as Master of Reality.
Some of these songs were already released years before. For instance, Faith No More's rendition of War Pigs was taken from their live release, You Fat Bastards, live at the Brixton Academy. 1000 Homo DJs, a side project of Ministry, released their industrial interpretation of Supernaut on a single in 1990. Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails sang on the song, but his label, TVT, wouldn't allow him to appear on the song. This version has Al Jorgensen on vocals. Trent's version would appear on the Wax Trax Black Box, and both versions were released as part of Ministry's Trax Box. While many bands were fighting over where to be on the album, Typo Negative made it easy for the label. They wanted to be the last song on the album. Between the dark piano sounds, the down-tuned guitars, and Peter Steele's Dracula-like vocal approach, Typo Negative turned the song into their own. Typo Negative did two versions of Black Sabbath. The one that appears on Nativity in Black has the lyrics from the original song, unchanged. Another version, aptly subtitled From the Satanic Perspective, has different lyrics. That interpretation would appear on the European single For My Girlfriend's Girlfriend, and later on the least worst of Typo Negative. In the United Kingdom, there was a cover of Solitude by the English doom metal band Cathedral. The Japanese version had Saint Vitus Dance and Wheels of Confusion, also by Cathedral. Solitude and Wheels of Confusion were on Earache Records' Sabbath tribute, Masters of Misery. For many people, this album was their introduction to some of the bands on it. While Nativity in Black is a who's who of 1990s metal, Pantera were absent from the album. They were slated to appear with a cover of Planet Caravan, but label politics got in the way. Pantera would release the song on their album Far Beyond Driven, but they would appear on the next volume of Nativity in Black. Nativity in Black 2 was released in 2000.
A lot can change in 6 years. Metal was in a different place, the world in general was different, and Black Sabbath themselves had reunited with the 1970s lineup and were doing tours.
This time, Priority Records and Divine Recordings released it. Nu metal was popular at the time. This volume had bands like Machine Head, System of a Down, Soulfly, Static X, Slayer, Monster Magnet, and Godsmack, just to name a few. Many of these bands played Ozfest, so they were close enough to Black Sabbath to be picked for the album. Godsmack gives their edge to Sweet Leaf. Machine Head does Hole in the Sky using some of the electronic elements they were using in their own music at the time. Electronics come into play again when Static X appears for Behind the Wall of Sleep. Megadeth returns to submit a recording of them blasting through Never Say Die. They made it sound more metal than the original. With their signature vocal arrangements, muted guitar picking, and dynamic range, System of a Down plays Snowblind in their own style. Pantera doomed it up with Electric Funeral. Dimebag Darrell, Vinnie Paul, Rex Brown, and Phil Anselmo sound as tight together as ever here, paying respect to their childhood heroes. Opening with a Les Claypool signature bass intro, Primus does a rendition of NIB with Ozzy singing. The most Primus thing about it is the bass tone, but Ozzy sounds comfortable having sang the song for over 30 years by this point. Slayer's version of Hand of Doom shows what happens when they slow and quiet down. Max Cavalera returns with his Soulfly project to shred a down-tuned Under the Sun. Head PE does a reggae and hip-hop fused take on Sabra Cadabra, using a sample from the original Sabra Cadabra. Monster Magnet's 8-minute cover of Into the Void is as psychedelic as anything you'd find on their Spine of God album. There's the Monster Magnet groove with much emphasis on dinosaurs in Vietnam. The only repeat song from the first volume is NIB. That is, unless you count Busta Rhymes' version of Iron Man, where him and Ozzy are singing new lyrics. This song originally appeared on Busta Rhymes' album Extinction Level Event, The Final World Front. The Japanese version had Slaves on Dope playing War Pigs. Though some people enjoyed the second volume, the praise usually goes to the first Nativity in Black. Of course, there are many other Black Sabbath tribute albums. Among these tribute albums include Masters of Misery by Earache Records, the In These Black Days volumes by Hydra Head Records, and Eternal Masters by Priority Records. Tribute albums act as a celebration of bands. Nativity in Black showcased the influence that Black Sabbath had on metal over 20 years on. Volume 2 showed that even with an evolving world of metal, Black Sabbath were still important.
Given Corrosion of Conformity's stoner metal sound they would adopt by the mid-1990s, they sit comfortably on a Black Sabbath stoner album. A Black Sabbath stoner album. Is that a thing? A Black Sabbath stoner? A lot can change in 6 years. Metal was in a different place, the world in general was different, and Black Sabbath themselves had reunited and were doing this. I'm holding the CD up the wrong way. Damn it.